Now I'm ready to go ahead and mask it in, so you'll know exactly how it's going to look when it's painted. And for this job, we're going to be using 3/4 inch masking tape and 6-inch masking paper. And so now, as you can see the blue tape beneath there. That's what you want to tape to next. And we just want to run another row of tape just like this one right there. Now we'll cut these out using the same technique. We'll grab my thumb here, all the way up and around it. You can see I cut most of it with my thumb, and I'll finish it off with the razor. Same here. We'll cut those out, we'll tape those up as well, and we'll put some tape right here. Now we got that done. As you can see here, got it all taped up, all masked up. Now we'll go ahead and go down the sides. Now, before I get started sanding, the first thing I want to do is I want to press all these down extra this morning. Get them all pressed down again, every one of them, every single seam. Because over the course of the night, some of these areas, like right here, will go ahead and contract, and so they'll make a bigger space. And some of these areas where the paper tape meets the vinyl will go ahead and come loose and fillet out. Then when you go sanding on it, that dust trickles down on there, then it'll never stick again. So first thing you do before you sand, especially after a whole night passes, the first thing we do is we'll go over this whole thing and get it all pushed down. Let's do this. Warp speed. Got this all sanded. Let's get this thing blown off and get it primed. Now what I intend to prime and paint this in, or with, is this 2.5 gallon pressure pot. It's got 2 regulators on top. One regulates the pressure to the gun, one regulates the pressure to the pot itself. I never use the gun when I leave it wide open because you can adjust the gun at the gun. There's the gun for it. 2.5 gallon. I also have a big 5 gallon one that's got rollers on it and stuff, but I won't need it for this. This isn't going to require, you know, that much paint. But the idea is that one of these regulators pressures it up, so that whole pot is pressurized now. When this is closed and locked down, this whole pot is pressurized now. That forces the liquid up through this hose all the way down, out and around that mess. It's a 50-foot hose I have on here. A 50-foot air hose right here, and a 50-foot fluid hose right here. And so the air hose, you know, charges this up and the gun up. That's why the 2 regulators. And the fluid hose comes out pressurized then. That way it makes it all the way to the gun under pressure, not the kind of pressure that you'd see in an airless sprayer. Just you get to adjust it, and I'll typically run it between 12 and 20 pounds of pressure. That's not enough to shoot, that's just enough to get the paint to the gun. Then the air right here is what does the rest. The air is what atomizes the paint and sprays it out in spray form. Fluid comes in right here, air comes in right here. That's the way a pressure pot works, and that's what I intend to use on this job here today. Now, when I go to film this, I'm going to do this end and one side, or the other end and the other side. It doesn't matter. One end and one side with 1 coat of primer, and then one end and one side with one of the 2 coats of paint. And the reason for that is because watching the second coat of primer is boring, and watching the second coat of paint is boring, and it overexposes this camera and lens and this whole setup to way too much overspray. So you'll be seeing half of it get sprayed with the first coat of primer and half of it gets sprayed with the first coat of paint. And that's the way that's gonna go. Time for talk is over. It's time to prime. Okay, we got 2 coats of primer on, including the underside. Everything's primed. 2 heavy coats. Well, 2 medium wet coats. Now let's get this thing painted, huh? Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint from the stripe up, all the way around the tank. I'm gonna use that stripe as a divider. Otherwise, I'll have what's called dry spray. And that's where you spray some paint. By the time you get back to it and cut back into that original spot that you sprayed, it's dry. And when you go over it, it doesn't have the same kind of gloss. It's called dry spray and it's obvious. And this paint dries fast enough that it will get it. So I just use that center stripe as my divider, and I do the entire top first, then I come do the entire bottom, spraying downward from the stripe on the bottom and upward from the stripe on the top, so I don't get overspray from one onto the other. Now, I'll go ahead, get rid of this camera, get the second coat on, and get out of this stinking shop. And that's it. Got 2 coats of primer on, 2 coats of paint on, 0 dry spray, not any dirt that I can see, 0 runs or sags. Got the entire underside done too. All done up nice and shiny. Finished. And it's only mid-afternoon, but that's really all I'm going to do in here today. It stinks to heck, and there's nothing I can do in here without stirring up dust, so I'm going to go find something else to do. After all, it's a Sunday afternoon. Shouldn't have to work my life away. Hey, you guys take it easy, okay? Dang.